Am I the a-hole for kicking my cheating ex and his pregnant girlfriend out of my house? I, 29F, had been with my ex, Liam, 31M, for almost 7 years. We were high school sweethearts, and I truly believed he was my soulmate. We talked about marriage, kids, growing old together, all of it. And for a long time, I thought we were on the same page. 2 years ago, we bought a house together. I was the one who found it, pushed for it, and handled all the paperwork, but Liam's name was on the deed too. We weren't married, but we were supposed to be in this together. I put in more money, but I told myself it didn't matter because this was our future. Then, a year ago, I found out he was cheating, and not just a one-time mistake. He had been in a whole relationship with another woman, Emily, 25F, for almost a year. I found out in the worst way possible. I was at work when I got a message from a random number. It was a long, apologetic text from Emily, saying she didn't know about me at first, but when she found out, Liam convinced her that we were just roommates. She believed him. Until she saw our anniversary pictures on my Instagram. I confronted Liam that night, and he didn't even try to deny it. He actually tried to make me feel bad, saying things like, "You were always too busy with work," and "Emily made me feel wanted." I packed a bag and left that night, staying at my best friend's place while we figured out what to do about the house. I was too emotionally drained to fight over it, and honestly, I just wanted to get away from him. So I told him I'd move out permanently if he refinanced the house under his name. He agreed, but never actually did it. Fast forward a few months, I finally started picking myself back up. I got promoted at work, started therapy, and even began dating again. I hadn't talked to Liam since the breakup, aside from the occasional text about bills. As far as I knew, he was still with Emily, but I didn't care. Until last week, I got a call from Liam out of nowhere. He sounded desperate and asked if we could meet at my place. That immediately raised a red flag because 1, it was still legally my house, even though I wasn't living there, and 2, he never asked to meet in person. Something was up. I told him no, but he showed up anyway. And he wasn't alone. Emily was with him, and she was very, very pregnant. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, waiting for them to explain themselves. Liam looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. Emily wouldn't even make eye contact with me. Then Liam said, "We need a place to stay." I almost laughed. Almost. Apparently, after I moved out, Liam never bothered refinancing the house, meaning his name was still on it. But so was mine. He and Emily had been living there this whole time, but now they were being evicted. Liam never kept up with the mortgage payments, and the bank was foreclosing. They had to be out by the end of the week. I just stared at him. He cheated, he lied, and now he wanted me to help him. But then Emily spoke, and her voice was shaky. "We have nowhere else to go. Please." I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the fact that she had been deceived by Liam too, or maybe I just wanted to hear how far they were willing to go. So I let them in. And that's when things really started getting weird. So, I let Liam and Emily inside. I wasn't exactly sure why I did it. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe a part of me still felt sorry for Emily. But once they were in, things started to feel off. Liam was already acting like everything was normal, like nothing had ever happened between us. He walked into the living room and slumped onto the couch like he had every right to be there. Emily stood in the doorway, shifting awkwardly. She was visibly pregnant, maybe 6 or 7 months along, and she had this wide-eyed look, like she didn't know what to say but didn't want to leave either. I motioned for her to sit down. "You can have a seat, Emily." "Liam, can I talk to you for a minute?" I took him to the kitchen, away from Emily. I wasn't sure if I wanted to scream or cry, but I was doing my best to stay calm. "How could you come here and act like nothing's wrong?" I asked, my voice low but cutting. Liam rubbed his face, looking almost exhausted. "Danielle, I messed up. I know I did, but I need your help. Please." Emily and I, We have nowhere else to go. Did you even try to figure something out? I shot back, my anger rising. You don't get to mess up my life and then come back, expecting me to just open the door. He lowered his head, avoiding my gaze. I know, I know. I thought it would work out. But she's pregnant, Danielle. We're about to have a kid. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I never expected to hear him say that. I had to bite my lip to keep from saying something I might regret. I paused, trying to gather my thoughts. So now you want me to feel sorry for you? You cheated on me for almost a year, and now because you're about to be a father, you want to act like we're a happy family? You don't get to turn the tables on me, Liam. He opened his mouth to argue, but then stopped, taking a deep breath. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't. But I don't know what else to do. I've messed up every part of this, and now I'm trying to make it right. I stared at him for a long moment, trying to figure out what to do. But then Emily walked into the kitchen, and I could see the guilt in her eyes. I didn't know about you, she said, her voice almost too soft. I swear, I didn't. He told me you two were just roommates. I didn't know he was lying. Her words made me sick to my stomach. I almost couldn't even look at her. I don't blame you, Emily, I replied, trying to keep my voice even. You weren't the one in the relationship. But Liam? He's the one who lied to both of us. He's the one who put us in this situation. Emily nodded, looking down at her hands. There was silence for a moment before Liam finally spoke up again. We're really sorry, Danielle. We'll leave if you want. We just thought you might help us for a little while, until we can figure something out. My head was spinning. It wasn't just the shock of everything that happened. I had been trying to move on with my life, and here they were, back in my space, throwing my past in my face. I felt like I was going crazy. I stood up, walking to the window and looking out. I wasn't sure what to say. It wasn't like I could just let them stay here indefinitely, and I didn't even know if I wanted to help them. But the part of me that still cared for Liam, maybe it was the guilt, maybe it was some twisted sense of responsibility, didn't want to just throw them out either. So, I said slowly, turning back to them, "You're asking me to let you stay here?" Liam nodded, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. I don't know, Liam. You're asking a lot. He swallowed, looking defeated. I get it, but we have no other options. Please. I glanced at Emily again, who was now sitting on the couch, clutching her stomach. There was something in her eyes that made me feel bad, but I quickly shoved that feeling aside. I let out a long sigh, trying to process everything. But before I could say anything more, the doorbell rang. The doorbell rang again, and this time I didn't even want to open it. I felt like my entire world was spinning out of control. First, Liam and Emily show up, and now my mom is here, adding more fuel to the fire. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I'll get it, I muttered, barely looking at my mom. When I opened the door, I was not expecting the person standing there. It was my aunt, Lisa, 42. She looked concerned, glancing behind me into the house. Hey, sweetie, I just heard. Her voice trailed off when she saw the tension in the room. Oh, no. This is a lot. I nodded, not knowing how to explain the situation. Aunt Lisa, I didn't. She waved me off, stepping inside. It's fine, honey. I'm not here to make things worse. But it's obvious things are already a mess. I didn't know how to explain it all, and honestly, I wasn't in the mood to try. Aunt Lisa had always been one of the only people who could talk me through anything, but even now, I didn't know where to start. You know, I heard about what happened with Liam, she said quietly, casting a glance at him. I know you must be feeling a lot of things right now, but this isn't how you fix things. I looked at her, almost desperate for some kind of answer. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do, Aunt Lisa. He's here, asking for help. She's pregnant, and I don't want to be the bad guy, but my mom's right. What am I supposed to do? She paused, letting the question hang in the air for a moment. You don't owe him anything. You've already given him enough, Danielle. I was about to respond when Liam stepped forward, looking almost apologetic. Danielle, please. But Aunt Lisa didn't let him finish. You don't get to speak right now, Liam. You lost that privilege when you chose to hurt her. It felt like I was watching the confrontation from the outside. I had to step in, but I didn't know what to say. Look, I'm not saying I want to throw you both out, I said, my voice shaking. But I don't know how to deal with this. This isn't how I thought my life was going to be. I can't just pretend everything is okay. Emily, who had been standing quietly in the background, suddenly spoke up. I didn't ask for any of this, she said, her voice soft. I didn't know about you. Liam told me you weren't together anymore. I didn't. She stopped, almost in tears. I could see how much this was tearing her apart, but I didn't know if I could help her. You're right, I said quietly, almost to myself. You didn't know. But Liam did. Liam's face turned red, and he looked like he might say something, but Aunt Lisa cut him off again. This isn't about you anymore, Liam. It's about her, and you need to respect that. The room felt smaller, and the weight of the situation was crushing me. I felt suffocated by everyone's emotions, everyone's expectations. I couldn't breathe. Can we just take a step back? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I need some space to think. Everyone just needs to calm down. My mom, who had been fuming in the background, suddenly spoke up. You need to kick them out, Danielle. You need to take control of your life again. Don't let them walk all over you. I looked at my mom, the anger boiling inside me. Mom, stop. Just stop. This is my decision. She didn't respond, just stood there with her arms crossed, waiting for me to make the call. I turned back to Liam and Emily, trying to keep my composure. I don't know what to do. I just don't. I want to help, but I can't lose myself in this. I've been through too much already. Liam's eyes softened, and for a moment, I almost saw the person I used to love in him. But then my mom's voice broke through again, sharp and demanding. You need to choose, Danielle. You can't keep letting him back into your life. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang yet again. I couldn't believe it. Another knock? I felt like my whole life was being turned upside down. I'll get it, I muttered again, my voice hoarse. I opened the door, already feeling the weight of everything on my shoulders. And there, standing in front of me, was my dad. He was tall, with graying hair and a look that usually meant he was about to fix everything. But right now, I didn't want to be fixed. I wanted things to just stop for a second. Dad? I said, confused and a little defeated. What are you doing here? He gave me that same look he always gave when he knew something was wrong. He stepped past me without saying a word and looked around the room. Then he saw Liam and I braced myself. I didn't want to go through this, but here we were. Dad, I said again, trying to keep it together. Please, I don't need this right now. But my dad wasn't one to back down. What the hell is he doing here, Danielle? He asked, his voice low but firm. After everything that's happened, after everything he's done to you, why is he still in your life? Liam looked up at my dad, his face going pale. I just need a place to stay for a bit, he said, his voice a little too shaky. We've been evicted, and we don't have anywhere else to go. My dad didn't even look at him, just turning his attention back to me. You're really letting him stay here? After what he did to you? My heart was racing, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I don't know what to do, Dad. I really don't. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want any of this. My dad looked at me for a long moment, his gaze softening. I know, sweetheart, but you can't keep letting him back in. He broke you, and now he's back, like nothing ever happened, asking for your help. It's not right. I turned away, walking to the kitchen. I needed to think. I couldn't handle this anymore. But my dad followed me, keeping his voice low, almost like he was trying to reason with me. You're better than this, Danielle. You know you deserve better. I know, I whispered, wiping a tear from my eye. But what if I'm just supposed to help? What if he really needs me? My dad sighed and leaned against the counter. He's not the same person you loved, sweetheart. You know that. And you don't owe him anything, especially after what he did. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just stood there, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. After a few moments of silence, I heard Liam and Emily talking in the living room. I couldn't hear the words, but I could feel the tension between them. Emily was asking Liam something, her voice shaky and unsure. Liam sounded defensive, trying to explain everything, but I couldn't bring myself to care enough to listen. A part of me wanted to help Emily. She seemed so lost in all of this. But Liam was the one who had destroyed everything. He was the one who betrayed me, lied to me, and now he was back, trying to act like everything could be fixed. Why? Mom's voice cut through the tension. Danielle, you need to make a decision. Now. I turned to face her. I don't know what you want me to do, Mom. You don't get to decide this. I'm trying to protect you, she snapped. You're too good of a person to let him keep walking all over you. I could feel the walls closing in. I couldn't think clearly, couldn't hear anyone, couldn't even trust my own thoughts. The silence stretched on until my dad spoke again, his voice gentle this time. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. You're allowed to take your time. I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I actually felt like I might have some control. But what if I make the wrong decision? What if I let them stay, and everything just falls apart again? My dad shook his head. That's the risk you take, sweetie. But you've already been hurt once. You have to ask yourself if you're willing to go through that again. I turned away, taking in everything that had just been said. My heart was torn in so many directions. I wanted to do the right thing, but what even was the right thing anymore? Just then, I heard a soft knock on the door again. I couldn't believe it. Another knock. I just stood there for a moment, staring at the door, feeling like I was suffocating in all of this. I glanced at my dad, and he just gave me a look that said he didn't know what to expect either. I walked slowly to the door, my mind racing. Who could it be now? I opened it and was met with the last person I ever thought would show up, my older brother, Ryan. He looked like he'd just come from work, wearing his usual button-up shirt and tie. But there was something in his eyes. He was worried, maybe even a little scared. Danielle, what the hell is going on? He asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Mom called me. She said there's some mess with Liam and his girlfriend. What is happening? I looked at him, the frustration and confusion I'd been feeling all day threatening to spill over. I don't know, Ryan. I don't know what to do anymore. Ryan glanced at the living room, where Liam and Emily were still sitting, and then back at me. His expression hardened. What is he doing here? I didn't even know how to explain it anymore. Liam. He's here because he needs a place to stay. He and Emily. I paused, unsure if I even wanted to explain it, but my brother wasn't the type to let things slide. So, you're really going to let this guy stay here? Ryan asked, his voice rising. After everything he did to you? After how he treated you? Are you seriously just going to let him waltz back into your life like nothing happened? The anger in his voice hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a sharp sting in my chest. I hated that he was right, but I didn't want to admit it out loud. I don't know what to do, Ryan, I whispered. He's asking for help. He says they have nowhere else to go. Ryan looked like he was about to explode, but then he paused. His tone softened, and he stepped closer to me, putting a hand on my shoulder. Danielle, you don't owe him anything. You've already given him enough. He hurt you in ways no one should ever let someone get away with. I nodded, tears starting to well up in my eyes. I know, but then there's Emily. She didn't ask for any of this. She's just pregnant. She didn't know about us. She didn't know what he did. Ryan's face softened, but he didn't back down. I get it. I really do. You're a good person, Danielle. But sometimes, being a good person means making the hard call. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back the tears. I didn't want to be the bad guy. But here I was, stuck between wanting to help and knowing I couldn't keep letting Liam back into my life. Are you really going to let them stay here? Ryan asked again, his voice quieter now, but still serious. I didn't have an answer for him. Instead, I walked back into the living room, feeling like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. Liam and Emily both stood up when they saw me. There was an awkward silence before Liam spoke, his voice unsure. Danielle, I get it. If you don't want us here, we can leave. I looked at Emily, who was standing next to him, her hands clasped in front of her like she was waiting for me to make a decision. I could see the fear in her eyes, the uncertainty. She wasn't a villain in all of this, but I couldn't deny that her presence made everything feel even more complicated. You don't have to leave, I said, my voice shaking, but I need some time to think. I can't just make a decision like this. I'm not ready. Liam nodded, but I could tell he was disappointed. Emily, on the other hand, looked relieved. I understand, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean to cause all of this. I don't know what to do either. The room was heavy with silence. I could feel my mom's eyes on me, her judgment lingering in the background, and Ryan standing near the doorway, still watching me like I was making a mistake. Finally, my dad broke the silence. Danielle, you don't have to rush this. Take your time, but don't let him manipulate you again. You've done enough for him. I looked at Liam one more time. His face was full of guilt, but also something else, something that I couldn't quite place. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was desperation. Either way, I didn't know if I could trust him anymore. I felt exhausted, like every inch of me was drained. I wasn't sure what the right answer was, but I knew I had to make one soon. But for now, I just needed a moment to breathe. I stood there in the living room, the weight of everyone's eyes on me. I didn't know what to do. The room felt suffocating. Liam, Emily, my mom, Ryan, everyone was waiting for me to make a choice, and I felt like I was failing at the most basic decision I'd ever have to make. Danielle, my dad said gently, pulling me back to reality, you don't have to do this now. You don't owe him anything. I nodded, but it didn't make me feel any better. It didn't ease the pressure. I knew my dad was right, but the reality of it was so much harder than it seemed. Liam seemed to sense the tension building, and he finally spoke up again. Look, I know I've messed up. I know I hurt you. But I'm not asking for forgiveness right now. I just need a roof over my head. His words hit me like a punch, and for a moment, I didn't know if I could even look at him. My heart was so torn. Emily, standing next to him, looked like she was on the verge of crying again. I could see how overwhelmed she was. She didn't ask for any of this mess. I didn't want any of this either, I said, my voice cracking. But it's not just about you, Liam. It's about everything. It's about me and my life, and whether or not I'm ready to let you back in. Emily nodded slowly, like she was trying to understand where I was coming from. I get that, she said softly. I really do. I didn't know about you, Danielle. I didn't know what he did. I didn't want to be a part of this. I could hear the sincerity in her voice, and I felt a small piece of guilt twist in my stomach. She didn't deserve to be stuck in the middle of all of this. But still, I couldn't ignore what had happened between me and Liam. Then why did you stay with him? I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Emily flinched, her eyes wide as she looked at me. Liam's jaw tightened, and I could tell he was getting defensive, but I wasn't done yet. You must have known something wasn't right, I said. I mean, Didn't you wonder why I wasn't in the picture anymore? Did you just not care? Did he not tell you anything about what he did to me? Liam opened his mouth to answer, but I cut him off. I don't want your excuses, Liam. I don't want your apologies anymore. I want to know why I'm supposed to pretend none of this ever happened. Ryan, who had been silent up until now, stepped in. Danielle, maybe this is just too much for you right now. You're being pulled in too many directions. You need to focus on what you need, not what anyone else wants. I glanced at him, thankful for his calm but firm words. He was right, but I didn't know how to do that. How do you put yourself first when everyone else's expectations are weighing you down? I looked back at Liam and Emily. I could see the fear in Emily's eyes, the uncertainty. She was pregnant and just trying to survive, but the reality was, I didn't have the energy to save her too. I can't be the one to fix this, I whispered. I can't fix you, Liam. I can't fix any of this. For a moment, it seemed like Liam didn't know how to react. He just stood there, looking lost. It was almost heartbreaking, but at the same time, I felt like I was losing pieces of myself by letting him back in. My mom, who had been watching everything unfold in silence, finally spoke up. Danielle, you're making the right call. You can't keep living like this. But I wasn't so sure anymore. I'm not sure I am, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I turned away from them, pacing around the room, trying to gather my thoughts. My mind was a swirl of emotions. I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew that I couldn't let Liam back in. But what about Emily? What about the baby? My dad spoke again, this time more softly. I know it's hard, but you don't have to do everything. You're allowed to take care of yourself first. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe through the overwhelming wave of anxiety. Everything felt wrong. Every option felt like a mistake. When I opened my eyes, my gaze fell on Emily again. She looked like she was holding herself together by a thread, and for a moment, I thought about what she was going through. I didn't want to add to her pain, but I couldn't ignore my own either. Finally, I spoke again. I need to think. I need a little more time. The room was so quiet that it felt like everything was suffocating me. I needed to make a decision, but I couldn't bring myself to. I didn't want to be the villain in this situation. I didn't want to make anyone's life harder, but at the same time, I couldn't keep living like this. I looked around at everyone. Their worried faces, their frustration, their disappointment. Liam's eyes were pleading, and Emily looked like she was about to break down. My mom, my dad, Ryan. They were all standing there, waiting for me to make the right choice. I could feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. No matter what I chose, it felt like it would come back to haunt me. I didn't want to be the person who kicked them out and ruined their lives, but at the same time, I couldn't allow myself to keep enabling Liam's behavior. I'm sorry, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't think I can do this. I can't have you both here. Not after everything that's happened. Liam's face fell, and I could see the hurt in his eyes. Emily looked like she might cry, and I felt like I was being torn apart. But I knew deep down, I couldn't keep allowing him back into my life. I'll find somewhere else, Liam muttered, barely looking at me. Emily nodded silently, her face pale. I felt a pang of guilt in my chest, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had to protect myself. I couldn't let the past keep controlling me. I couldn't let myself be manipulated anymore. As they gathered their things, I stood by the door, feeling like I had made the hardest decision of my life. But I still wasn't sure if I had made the right one. My heart ached for Emily, and I hated the idea of her being alone, but I couldn't be the one to fix everything. Not this time did I turn to my family, who had been standing in the background, waiting for me to take control. My dad gave me a look that was a mix of relief and sadness. Ryan's expression was soft, but I could tell he wasn't entirely happy with the situation either. I sat down on the couch, exhausted, feeling like I had just been through a hurricane. I don't know if I did the right thing, I whispered, but I can't keep living like this. My dad sat next to me and put a hand on my shoulder. You did what you had to do, Danielle. It's not easy, but you have to put yourself first sometimes. But even with his reassurance, I still couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, I was the one in the wrong. I didn't want to be the person who shut people out when they needed help the most. But I couldn't let Liam back into my life. Not after everything, so here I am, asking for your opinion. AITA for kicking my cheating ex and his pregnant girlfriend out of my house? Or did I make the right call? If you think Danielle made the right call, or if you think there's more to the story, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video if you want to see more stories like this, and subscribe so you never miss an update.